Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Well, happy February to you. The first day of the second month of 2024. I am Seth Harp, Brent Beaird waiting in the wings. This is PodUp with Matthews in the morning, coming to you from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, of course, small enough to care. What a show that Brent has cooked up and that we have put together for you today. Topic-wise, we got a lot. When people say, though, it's a down season, there's not much to talk about. Not the rule today. Wait till you see some of the great stuff we've got in store for you. You can be a part of it. Facebook Live questions brought to you by Meldon Law, the only official law firm and accident injury law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Facebook Live questions, courtesy of Quality Plumbing, residential and commercial plumbing services and emergency repair. Since 1984, their name says it all. Also, you can fire away your questions via the Titan MRI text line. Both of us swinging in courtesy of the Titan MRI hotline today. That number, 352-353-7465. Okay. Signature win night. Not only signature win night, the biggest win that Florida basketball has had since Chris Chiozza, runner in the lane against Wisconsin. Ready for this? 7 years ago? Has it been that long? It has, hasn't it? It's been 7 years. In terms of signature marquee wins. When you hit a runner in the lane to go to the Elite Eight, Mike White's second year at the helm, that was the last big signature moment away from the O'Connell Center. You got one last night, got one against a team that could be a Final Four team. And now the Florida Gators find themselves at 15-6 overall, 5-3 in the conference. And as he enters stage right, Brent Beaird, Brent, I think for the first time this year, you can safely say the Florida Gators, for the time being, are in the NCAA basketball tournament.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Good morning and happy February. Where did January go? But look, it was a huge win for Florida. The first win on the road versus a top 10 team since 2003. Walter Clayton was tremendous, tying the game up. Had 23 points overall. And Seth, frankly, Florida should have won in Gainesville over Kentucky, and I mean they were almost on the verge of sweeping them. I think one of the things that's impressed me about Florida, and now at this point they're 5-3, 15-6. Alabama leads the SEC 7-1, and look, they're only a couple of games away from the top of the heap. So big win for them. There's no question about that. One of the things that really caught my eye real quick about the Gators is, I mean, they frankly are the leading team, or certainly one of them, in rebounds. And that served them well last night in just a tremendous win on the road. Yes, they're averaging 44 rebounds per game. A&M and Tennessee are second and third. So huge win for Florida. But as you know, Seth, in this league, it just gets bigger as you go toward the weekend too.
As a young man, and Brett, I got to experience the best of both worlds growing up in Indiana, right? Because
you did.
I had Indiana basketball that was always at the forefront with Purdue, always relevant. I had Notre Dame football. And we may laugh about that today, but Brett, you and I both know in the 80s, those were pretty big deals.
It was.
Gigantic deals. They were winning national championships. So,
right.
You know, and I look at it, and having both sisters went to Butler, having a buddy that played basketball in Indiana, having friends that played in Notre Dame, you know, I always learned. In football, we talk about not turning the ball over, running the ball, all that fun stuff, controlling the clock. Basketball, win on the road, you need to do three things, right? Got to control the glass. Gators did. Out-rebounded Kentucky. You have to make your free throws. Florida, free throw. I never thought you'd say this, would you? Florida Gators shot 82% on the road from the stripe last night and shot more free throws than Kentucky. Florida shot more free throws than Kentucky last night in Lexington. Shot 82%. Kentucky only shot 65%. And you also need a guy that has that ice in his veins, to use a terrible cliche. You need that guy. You need that dude that's give me the ball. This thing's over. Me, watch this. Here it comes. You see that with Patrick Mahomes in football. You saw it in the postseason in college football. But pick your poison. I mean, you saw it with Jaden Daniels this year. You saw it with variety. You got Bo Nix. You saw it with all these guys this year. Walter Clayton Jr. last night. When you can go on the road, Brent, and you can bury 7 threes in Lexington, you're doing something. And
you really are.
That game's going to be remembered for a while, for a long time.
It will be.
Because of his ability to go on the road and make big shots. Anybody can beat teams at home, but when you can go on the road and pick up a top 10 win over against a team that has the talent to get to the Final Four, that we're talking about winning the SEC, you've done some serious damage. And again, Todd Golden has his signature win. So there we are with that, at least in terms of structure. Looking ahead, Florida basketball now has what? They have A&M on the road. They return home to take on Auburn, sitting there at 15-6 overall, 5-3 in the conference, 18 conference games. So, Brent, you start to do the math. Even if you go 500 down the stretch, that gets you to 10-8 in the conference and gets you to what? 20-11 overall. I think that puts you, if you go 5-5 down the stretch, that gets you squarely on the bubble. But if they can somehow split these next two, find a way to win one of the next two, they're going to finish above 500 in the conference. They're going to make the NCAA tournament. And in a year where there have been a lot of question marks about Gator sports, predominantly football and predominantly basketball, in which Scott Strickland doesn't know what he's doing. Brent, if Scott Strickland's going to get criticized for his hires when they don't win, doesn't he deserve to get credit when they do?
Well, he does. I agree with that totally. And now A&M has been shaky. And I like Buzz Williams. He's one of the better coaches in the league, but A&M is not really played that well this year. And I can easily tell you, and you know this, a signature win, number 2, would be a win over Auburn.
Yes.
That's coming up. Now, Auburn they beat Vanderbilt last night, but they lost to Alabama and Mississippi State on the road. And we know what it is like to playing on the road. So, look, Seth, how much would a Kentucky win and an Auburn win do for that NCAA tournament resume?
Yeah, and what that does is that allows you to blow one down the stretch.
It does.
It allows you to make a mistake, but it's one of these things that this team, you have a collection of these guys that, a lot of guys coming in from the transfer portal. It's just the way college sports is now, right? You're not North Carolina, you're not Duke, you're not Kansas, where you're going to have these 3 McDonald's All-Americans on this team. It's just not going to happen, even when they won back-to-back national championships 15 years ago. It's hard to believe 15, 16 years ago now, but it was longer than that. But those guys, you didn't have 3 or 4 McDonald's All-Americans on those teams. So what do you have to do? You have to put it together, and then it gels and it clicks at the right time. And it clicked. As bad as they looked in the second half or the final 5 minutes against Georgia, they looked equally good in the last 5 minutes last night. And Brent, what's impressive about that is that's not a win where they got up big and they coasted. It's not a win in which somebody got hurt. It's not a win where a call didn't go your way. It's a win where Florida dug themselves a double-digit deficit on the road in Lexington and chipped away and hit big shot after big shot after big shot down the stretch, got the ball in overtime. And to steal a line from one of my favorite movies, Animal House, Brent, they walked in and said, "Do you mind if we dance with your dates?" And that's exactly what they did. And again, Todd Golden's got his signature win. And bubble, off the bubble, they're not, if I had to sit there, Brent, and I haven't looked at any of the updated bracketology things of that nature, because whatever. But right now, Florida's probably a 7 or an 8 seed with that win last night. Okay, then now you start to build up. But you're right, Brett. I mean, if you somehow can pick off Auburn, now you got 2 top 15 wins, and you sit there. If you split the next 2, you're 6-4 in the conference. Right now, Florida finds themselves what? Tied. They're 1 game out of the loss column for second place. Good God. Did you think, Brett, we'd be sitting here in February after that 1-3 start and talk about how Florida's 1 game in the loss column away from second place in the conference?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And listen, they had a character win against Georgia. I mean, to blow the lead up 21, go to overtime, and they were still able to win the game. And also, we mentioned Walter Clayton. He's 7th in the league in scoring. Zion Pullen is 11th. So, look, and they had 320, the 3 guys who scored 20 last night. I thought that was huge. Will Richard continuing to play well, too. But you're right. Marked improvement from the start.
Yeah, and again, one thing to beat a team like this at home, they blew the big lead 3 weeks ago, but to dig a double-digit deficit there and not crumble and to find a way to win, Todd Golden deserves a ton of credit for that. Ton of credit for that. He is Brent Beaird. I am Seth Harp. This is PodUp with Matthews in the morning, brought to you in part by Duffield Home Improvements, your local roofing, siding, and window contractor, serving Gainesville and the surrounding area since 1986. Also by the 1966 HBC beer, available at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, Gator games in the O-Dome. Sure you get some for that Auburn game. And select retail outlets, crisp American lager, 1966 HBC beer. So there we go on that front. And you heard Brent mention earlier, A&M on the road, and then returning home to take on Auburn. 10 conference games to go, and you have to piecemeal it by what do? You beat or you take care of business against the low-hanging fruit, and you pick off a big win every now and then, where Florida is with Todd Golden in year 2. That's what you need to do to make the NCAA tournament, and that's what he's done. And I know A&M is below 500 in the conference, but that's going to be tough. Auburn's going to be tough. And then when they got Georgia coming up, and then Vandy a couple times, South Carolina sits there in second place in the conference right now. So it's an interesting league at this point as we turn the calendar and hit the month of February. We're there. Again, marquee, big-time win, and you do it by making your free throws, out-rebounding your opponent, and jamming threes down their throat in the second half, and that's what the Florida Gators did. So there we go. PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Seth Harp in for Shane today. Brent Beaird sitting here as well. So we got the big basketball story. Well, Florida, big win. Other things that are going on. And I know, Brent, that we talked about this over the course of you and I doing this show at times. Florida has hired a new, special teams coach.
Yes.
Coming in from the New England Patriots for football. What else do we have on the docket? Oh, what do you know? Somebody's suing the NCAA, and it's Tennessee. I know a lot of people like to rip on the NCAA, and rightfully so. But when you've got this wild, wild west mentality when it comes to NIL, and there are no real hardcore rules in place, and every state's got their own rule. At California, is it California and Texas you can pay high school kids? But here in Florida, you can't. And now Tennessee is suing because of the NCAA's, punishment. Brent, if I were the NCAA, I'd tell each conference commissioner and every athletic director and every president to go kick rocks. All we are going to do is from now on is we're going to set up tournaments, and we are going to hand out trophies, and we are going to arrange hotels and things of that nature for all the championships. But we as the NCAA are getting out of the discipline business. You guys can handle that stuff, because I don't know what you're supposed to do with NIL without rules in place. And every time somebody gets in trouble, Brent, whether it's Penn State with the Sandusky stuff, or USC with Reggie Bush's family getting houses, or Miami cheating, or North Carolina students not even going to class and having fake degrees, and every time you punish them, the school sues you. If I were the NCAA, I'd say, whatever, you boys figure it out. This lawsuit, Brent, from what you've seen and what you've heard, where do we go next?
Well, we're just waiting here. And what's interesting that little has been said about now Tennessee has yet to, at least is what we're seeing, has yet to receive a formal notice of allegations. That's important that you get that, because whatever date that is, that will determine, everyone's got a certain amount of days to respond. To Tennessee will, and then the NCAA will respond after that too. Now, again, the thing that is a little shaky here for Tennessee is obviously they were hit with what was termed major infractions just a few months ago when Jeremy Pruitt was there as their head coach, with recruiting violations from 2018 to 2020. But the reality for that is they were not hit very hard with that. And again, that's but people will remember that's when Jeremy Pruitt and with his tenure, and players were getting money in McDonald's bags, if you remember that. So what has changed, as Seth alluded to, is instead of sitting back and cooperating with the NCAA, what's happening now is schools and even like the Attorney General from the states or suing the NCAA now for, and what Seth also alluded to is true, that this is taking a real turn for their enforcement arm of the NCAA. So we will certainly watch that one closely. What this tells us, still on the big picture, we've talked about this over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and it bears repeating real quick, is frankly the big boys, the Big Ten and the SEC, sooner than later, Seth, are going to actually be able, because they have the money to do it, to pull away at some point from the NCAA and basically form their own entity. Now, we have no idea when that's going to be. We have no idea what that's going to be like, and it's just really guesswork. But that's coming. People realize that now, and what I'm hearing and reading is, and both those conferences behind the scenes are discussing this, coming up with some kind of a plan in order to deal with it, because they are tired of making all the money, and that schools from much smaller conferences are deciding what they and other conferences are doing. So, but again, Seth, a lot of this is guesswork, but the NCAA is trying to quit being the toothless tiger and trying to punish some of these schools because of NIL. But what you alluded to a minute ago is true. We really don't have any guidelines. A lot of these schools are confused and saying, how can you punish me when I really don't know what rules I need to follow?
Yeah, and until you create, and I've said this for a year now, Brent, you almost have to salary cap it, and each school gets a certain amount to spend on it. And if you go over it, you don't get to go to the postseason. That's about the only idea that each player, you can spend $100,000 on each, or whatever it is. You get an allotment, however you want to pay them. It's up to you, because in Florida, no matter what, schools like Florida, any school in Florida, any school in Texas, if you don't have state income tax, then you're already at an advantage. Florida's at such an advantage over a school, let's say like UCLA. Florida's at such an advantage over a school, let's say like Michigan, just because of the state income tax structure that you have. So you're going to be in an advantage eventually when you figure it out. I think what happened with all this is individual fans of individual schools overestimated their own value of what we've got plenty of money. We've got plenty of money. Brent, ain't nobody got money like Texas oil money. you know, or Nike, Phil Knight, Oregon money, or depending Silicon Valley money. And the problem is when you have different regulations, I can pay you more than you can pay, and it's not a real open marketplace. And the sports that are the most successful in America have a salary cap. The NFL,
that's right.
It just is. So until you put these guidelines on, but the Big Ten doesn't want a cap on what they pay. They make $100 million coming up here with their TV contract.
Absolutely.
The SEC's got their money. They're going to be close to that $100 million. They kind of want one, but don't want one. And then you've got like the ACC who wants one, not because for the betterment of everybody, to keep the other two conferences down. So there's no way to do this and without. I know they tried to get Congress involved, but Brett, they can't agree on anything. They can't get it. I mean, they haven't got anything done. So if you can't pass a bill in which you have bipartisan agreement on the border, how on earth are you going to get 50 states lined up with NIL rules? So it's an interstate rule. You play games outside of your state and it's different monetary amounts. I just don't see how this works. I had an idea that if these conferences want to float apart, now let's face it, Brett, we got a Big Four, right? Now that the Pac-12's gone, we got Big Four conferences. Each conference commissioner is in charge of discipline for the other conference. So the SEC commissioner is in charge of discipline for the ACC. The ACC commissioner is in charge of discipline for the Big 12. If you want to see how easy this is for the NCAA, then that's how you'd have to have them oversight, because they essentially don't want any oversight. It's what they don't want. And the NCAA screws up a lot of stuff. I get it. But this thing with Tennessee and they deserve their letter. I get it. But Tennessee's right by saying, what rules are we breaking? Yeah. And he said, well, you know better. Brett, I guess it's kind of like when you're a kid and you're out at the store or you're doing things and you're acting up and your mom's like, hey, knock it off. You're like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. When you got your finger an inch away from your sister's nose. And you're like, I didn't touch her. That's kind of what I feel about NIL, but nonetheless.
And there's several things going on real quick, and I'll mention these real quick. Seth, where we're actually headed for, I don't necessarily like this, but we're headed toward the NFL model. Yeah. In that we have contracts and a collective bargaining situation. The other thing that's going on is FSU is pursuing continually getting out of the ACC. What they're basically doing now is just trying to get that someone's figured out that in order for them to get out, they would end up having to spend like $500 million. Well, what they're trying to do right now is negotiate that to where they can get out. The ACC will get a chunk of change from that, but they'll be on their way probably to the Big Ten. And once that happens, several of their brethren in the ACC are going to be gone too. So we've got a lot of plates spinning here at the same time.
He is Brent Beaird. I am Seth Harp. This is PodUp with Matthews in the morning, brought to you in part by Ruse Ogra State Farm Insurance, a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go in the right direction for you and your family. Visit ograinsurance.com. Give them a call, 352-240-1779. That's 352-240-1779. Also, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, brought to you in part by Radware, family-owned business that prides itself in excellent customer service while providing quality and affordable promotional products and customized apparel. If you got any questions for Brent or PodUp with Matthews in the morning, fire away, courtesy of Facebook Live, Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Of course, YouTube, Quality Plumbing, residential, commercial. There we go. Geez. Services, emergency repair, 1984. Name says it all. How about that? Celebrating Quality Plumbing, celebrating their 40th year. Good stuff, guys. And also Titan MRI, Brett and myself, of course, courtesy of the Titan MRI hotline. We got a lot more that we need to dive into as we approach halftime here. Of course, the Senior Bowl going on this week. Brent following guys, got a Gator there. And also tonight on the radio, we're going to have the East-West Shrine game. Yeah, Brent, that's where we are. There's no college basketball games for us to air tonight, and the Lightning are at the All-Star break, so we're going to throw the East-West Shrine game on ESPN, 98.1 FM, 850 AM, WRUF at 8 p.m. So, we got the All-Star collection of college football games, which essentially are precursors to the draft, right? And give you a little bit of an idea of where those guys are and where they are going. And, this day in sports history, we've talked about this, and I got to give Brent credit because he sent me his notes. How many years ago today the Green Bay Packers hired Vince Lombardi?
65 years ago today. Oh, well, it was actually Sunday, Seth, but you get the point.
Yeah.
Had a 5-year mega deal, right, Seth? $36,000 a year. Hey, Seth, we've got players making that much money and more in NIL now, much less the head coach of the Packers.
That's crazy when you think about it. What I thought was fascinating was I try to teach the students in the classes that I teach about the business of sports. And then LSU hired Nick Saban away from Michigan State 25 years ago. They gave him, ready for this, Brent? 4-year, $6 million deal. Yes.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Yes. And I remember Alabama hiring Saban in 2007. They were paying him $4 million a year, and people thought they'd given away the farm in that situation. And we've got coaches now who are making 10, 11, 12 a year. It is amazing.
Yeah, they spent $4 million just remodeling the trophy room there in Tuscaloosa. Because So that's kind of where they are. Brent Beaird, Seth Harp here. We've reached halftime on this February 1st edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Got some more boxes we're going to check with Brent as it's All-Star week for college football. East-West Shrine Game, Senior Bowl, as we start to look ahead to some other things. We'll circle back around to Gator basketball. And, we're way away from the Super Bowl yet, but I got a couple questions for Brent as February kicks off. Seth Harp, Brent Matthews here on PodUp with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Campus USA, put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, watch. Duffield Home Improvements for your window, siding, and roofing needs. Radware, your local provider of promotional products, uniforms, and apparel. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Radware, F45, Quality Plumbing. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Pro football legend Emmitt Smith understands your joint pain.
It does not surprise me that there are a ton of people out there that's in pain.
That's why Emmitt is such a proponent of QC Kinetics, offering real lasting joint pain relief with non-surgical, all-natural biologic treatments.
Whether it's a joint pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, hip pain, any kind of pain, the body eventually will break down when it's under that much stress.
That stress can cloud your judgment to the point that you'll just say yes to the scalpel or yes to another prescription prescription of pain pills. But maybe it's time for a second opinion from QC Kinetics.
The reason why I would recommend this is because the natural biologics that QC Kinetics is providing you gives your body a chance to naturally heal itself.
Restorative, regenerative solutions are here. Get lasting relief and live your life.
Call QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550. That's 352-400-4550. QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550.
Seth Harp, Brent Beaird with you here on this Thursday, first day of February 2024. PodUp with Matthews in the morning, courtesy of a variety of great sponsors, including Silverback Concrete, family-led team of heavy concrete specialists that build commercial structures with unrivaled quality. Silverback Concrete, you stand on it, we stand by it. There we go. Let's see here. Got a bunch of things we're going to get to. Questions rolling in. I love smart questions. I love intelligent questions. I got people sitting here saying, Seth said his name 5 times now. It's called a reset, where I say Brent Beaird, Seth Harp with you today because we were in for Shane, but it's okay. It's okay. Brent, you know me, baby. If you're talking about me, as long as you're telling the truth, that's all I ask. Got a couple things, and I said I love smart questions. Andy McIntosh writing in here. Brent, you covered the Senior Bowl, Mobile. Brent and I both have covered the Senior Bowl being in Mobile in Alabama in our time. Ricky Pearsall at the Senior Bowl. How's he doing? Before you answer that, Brent, I do know that Bo Nix struggled mightily. Talked about his arm strength, getting the ball down the field, fumbling. But Ricky Pearsall's there. Before we get to, individual SEC play and individual teams here, East-West Shrine game tonight, Senior Bowl. What are you hearing with regards to Ricky Pearsall and maybe some of the SEC guys in Mobile this week?
Well, I'll say this: I haven't heard anything bad. I think he's doing okay from what I hear. And again, as Seth knows, the importance of the Senior Bowl is not only to be able to show what you can do on the field, but I think just as important, it is meeting the managers. It is beginning to learn how to do the interview process. And look, I've had a lot of media tell me, and I would agree with this, the game is, it's not that the game is meaningless, but it's what they do during the week that is more important, and meeting the general managers and folks like that. So that's extremely important. You mentioned Bo Nix. Bo is, and look, Bo needs to be in the perfect system for him. And he was at Oregon, and when he's out of that system, he's going to struggle. So that will be interesting to see how they deal with Bo. Joe Milton is another SEC quarterback who is there that needs to be there. I mean, that he needs people to work with him. He is still going to be a project, frankly, where that's going. So, but still, of all the All-Star games, the Senior Bowl has the most prestige. I get that. And Seth, you know this from living in the great state of Alabama like I have. Mobile in that area goes out of their way. That is the highlight of their year, and for their economy and so forth. That is extremely important to them, is it not?
Oh, it's great. And I remember the year I did play-by-play for that. There was a young punter from West Virginia that stole the show. His last name was McAfee. First name Pat. Yeah. And Pat White from West Virginia was the MVP of the game. And remember, everybody was talking about him like he's the next big thing. He's the next big thing. The Dolphins drafted him, and after a year or two, he fizzled out. There's some big names that come out of that. I remember B.J. Raji from Boston College worked himself into the top 10 that year at the Packers and had a good career. That was the year that you had the 3 USC linebackers, Clay Matthews Jr., Ray Maluga, and who's the third one? Cushing from that ended up with the Texans. So yeah, how about that? Speaking of that, question earlier that came in, Brent, before we get to these individual SEC related teams, at least as spring practice starts to peek around the corner, right? Because we're in February. Boston College's head coach. Something that you never used to see, Brent. Head coaches leaving college programs to become assistants at the NFL level. And Boston College's coach, right, just deuces out. I had a sister that did her grad work, got her graduate degree at BU. So Boston College's campus is beautiful. It is stunning. Chestnut Hill is a wonderful place. But Brent, Boston College sports are the 9th. Boston College football is the 9th biggest sport in that city. Of course, the Big Four: Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, Bruins. And then you start to go down the checklist of BU hockey, Boston College hockey. It's just one of those things that Boston College football, that is what Lee Corso used to call a cemetery program. You get in, you get in, you get out. You don't hang out too long, and that's what he did. And Brett, wouldn't you agree that being an assistant coach at the NFL level is probably a bigger deal? Has more job security than being the head coach at Boston College? At least you have a better chance of success.
I think what's happening here, and I hope this doesn't last long, but some of these coaches are going to the NFL because that's all they do is coach. And that's the reason that they got into it in the first place. They're not dealing with NIL, they're not dealing with the portal, and they're not dealing with having to re-recruit their roster. Now, again, to be honest here, some other folks have raised a question. It's a good one. And even though they had made bowl games in 3 of his 4 years, Jeff Hafley is who we're talking about. Was he eventually going to get fired? And did he also understand where the ACC is going to, as we mentioned a little bit ago? Now, one of the reasons I brought this up is Labor Day night, Boston College comes to Florida State, who, by the way, is refurbishing their stadium. We'll get to that in a bit. So that was going to be the game. Now BC comes to Tallahassee on Labor Day night with a new coach, whoever that's going to be.
Yeah, I don't know why you'd want. The only reason you'd want that job is to propel you to the next job.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, long gone are the days of Tom Coughlin at BC.
Yes.
Right? Those days. That used to be. Come on, I mean, that used to be not elite, but that used to be a nice secondary program, right?
It was.
That used to be a good,
absolutely
8-3, 9-3 type of college football program that was dangerous. They knocked Notre Dame out of a national title hunt that year. Florida State won it, and there were times that they knocked Clemson out. I mean, they were a decent program. Heck, when Matt Ryan was there, Brett, did they rank second in the country? That one year they worked their way all the way up to number 2, I think, or maybe even number 1 when USF. Well, that was a weird time, wasn't it? When
it was.
USF was number 1, Boston College was number 2.
Oh yeah. We probably will never see that again. By the way, Hafley was 22 and 26 in 4 seasons at BC. So whoever goes there, to your point, Seth, probably going to be around 500.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a handful of jobs that are worse than that in college foot. Maybe, but Vanderbilt, you get paid. And there's actually, going 6-6 at Vanderbilt's like winning the lottery. So
absolutely.
Right. Going 6-6 at Boston College, we're going to replace. I mean, just a different world. Brent Beaird, Seth Harp, PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Of course, if you have questions, fire away. Meldon Law, Facebook, Quality Plumbing, YouTube, Titan MRI Hotline. PodUp with Matthews in the morning is a service of Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and the surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com. And Friday, Peachland Dentistry, JC and the QB's weekend picks. Also, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, built by Duffield Home Improvements, your local roofing, siding, window contractor serving Gainesville and the surrounding areas since 1986. I'll circle back around. We'll, for those of you that have just slid in, talk a little Gator basketball coming up here. But Brent, going down the checklist, spring ball, we found out in the last week that Gator football, their spring games are moving back to Saturday, 1 p.m. Should be good for people that want to come from out of town on the weekend. I get it. The reason it was in prime time during the week was for television, right? SEC network stuff, but
Yeah, yes.
moves back to the weekend. But as you start to go through the checklist here and spring ball starts to heat up, names that are jumping out to you. I know I try to look ahead here a little bit, and who will be the preemptive SEC preseason player of the year favorite? Texas, Oklahoma. Brent, enter the chat with your SEC previews now. So as we hit the month of February, spring practice starting right around the corner, what do you got in store for us?
We've got to pay attention to that now because Texas and Oklahoma, we'd look and see if they won and how they were doing. But now, since they're a member of the SEC, it is going to be different. Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma is well thought of. Now, Quinn Ewers is quarterback for Texas. That's something else that we're going to be seeing here too. And listen, you mentioned the Florida has their spring game on April the 13th, and we just came out this week. FSU has theirs on the 20th. That is a godsend for media. And look, I know our listeners don't really care, but what you should care about is, and Seth, you've had to go through this like I have. Oftentimes in the past, they've had their spring games on the same day. So you just basically either flip the coin or your editor or program director made a decision on who is going to cover what. Now, instead of having to make that decision, one plays on one week, one plays on the other week, makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
Oh, and look, I've always said this, and from the radio perspective, I want every single Florida game at noon because in terms of just sheer ratings and listening to the radio, I know you're not tuning into me at 8 p.m. at night. I know, 8 p.m. games, primetime games are built for TV. 12 o'clock games,
absolutely,
on the other hand, are built for radio. So I've always been under the contention. Our rating, Seth, that's not true. Yes, it is. I've been doing radio for 30 years. Our ratings on noon games, Florida could play Vanderbilt at noon. More people listen to the radio than if they play LSU at 8 o'clock at night.
Sure. Sure.
So the spring game at 1 o'clock on a Saturday, ratings gold, Brent Beaird, ratings gold.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah, Seth, when we're talking about different teams, I'll hit some different notes of different teams just to highlight some things. We'll kind of go in alphabetical order. Alabama's hired TCU's Aaron Hodges to help their recruiting, and they've also got Jatavius Sanders from NC State to also help them. They've got a pretty good staff there at Alabama now, and they really start in earnest next week. Auburn has hired DJ Durkin, and people are thinking, well, that sounds familiar. Well, it is, because Durkin has been all around the league, right, Seth? Been at A&M, he's been at Ole Miss, he's been at Florida. So he has been hired at Auburn. This was sad. Prayers and condolences to Terry Beasley's family. Seth, you remember Sullivan and Beasley, the great combination in Auburn. Unfortunately, Terry Beasley died yesterday, 73 years old. And I know we've got people listening to us. That Sullivan to Beasley combination was lethal to secondaries and one of the greatest combinations in SEC history.
Yeah, and you go back to that era too. They were about 15, 20 years ahead of their time.
Yes.
In terms of what they could do, offensively and structurally. So Brent, it's kind of weird and I saw this the other day, and it's not when the people that you grew up watching. My favorite baseball player ever is Ryan Sandberg. And found out he has prostate cancer. I
saw that. Yes.
Ryan Sandberg, 60. I'm like, he's in his 60s? I mean, the guy whose poster I had on my wall and Rhino and Cubby.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
wait a second,
Yeah.
Seth. Yeah, because you're in your mid-40s now. Of course he's in his 60s, but time's undefeated, Brent. I'll just leave it at that.
There's no question about that. Listen, speaking of at the end of his time, Claude Felton, who I would say has been the model sports information director in the entire league, after 45 years is retiring. I am grieved about that, and a lot of people maybe wonder who we're talking about. But for us in the media, we've all dealt with Claude Felton at one time or another. He is very fair. He's a very kind is a word I want to use. He is a great human being. I don't know. I'm sure you've dealt with him at some point,
Yes.
Seth. But I wanted to bring that out. So certainly kudos to him. How many people are in this business 45 years?
Well, the thing I always remember this about Claude. I had just moved from South Carolina to Georgia, and I was covering a Georgia game in Athens, and it was my first time there, covering the Bulldogs. And he came up to me, and it was one of these things that you go through, you get your media credential, and everybody pretty much pockets and does their things. He walked up, and I remember this voice over me was like, "Seth, welcome to Athens. If there's anything I can do for you, just let me know." That's the guy in charge.
That's right.
I'm like,
yes.
In a business where, Brett, you've been in press box, in some of these, again, you have SIDs that have their nose so far up in the air, you can see the forest of their nostrils.
Right.
Claude, to me, the most unassuming, nicest, outgoing, always returns emails, always returns phone calls. If there is someone better in college sports at their job than Claude Felton, I have yet to find him.
I agree with that totally. Absolutely. Oh, yes. And moving on here with some notes, Eric Wolford, who was at Alabama, the offensive line coach, looks like he's going back to Kentucky. He's a good offensive line coach, so I think they will be fine at Kentucky. So I think that's good. Ole Miss is hiring Derek Nix, or that they're actually replacing him with George McDonald, who's from Illinois. Nix going to Auburn, and boy, oh boy, watch out for this Ole Miss team. They have put together a tremendous roster, and they're going to be in the top 10 when the magazines come out and the polls come out. That's something to look forward to. Also, South Carolina, looks like they're probably going to hire Joe DeCamulus to replace Pete Limbo, who left, and I think it'll be a crucial year too for Shane Beamer. I'm not saying he's going to get fired, but they played well early in his early years there. He hadn't been there that long, but you remember in November they beat Florida, Tennessee, and Clemson. So they really got off to a good start with him. So that's going to be interesting to see where that goes all the way around. The ACC schedule is out. I want to remind folks of that. Florida State obviously begins in Ireland. They play Georgia Tech, and then they play Boston College. You remember Rick Stockstill? Seth, that was at Middle Tennessee for 18 years. He is now a named director of scouting for offense at Florida State. I don't know if you've met Rick, but to be a head coach at a school for 18 years is significant too. I think he'll help Florida State out a lot. That's a good guy, and I'm glad he landed on his feet.
Every now and then, I think you forget that the coaches move around so much and do so many things, that there are good guys in this business. There are good guys that do this that we get to cover. And you mentioned Rick, and you mentioned Claude, two of the best. And being anywhere for 5 years now is a big deal. So when you're someplace for 2 years, in sports that it's competitive is competitive. I tip my hat to you, and good for him. I'm glad that he's found his footing there. And again, it's in a day and age where so much moving around, and not to completely jump. I was glad to see last week Joe Mauer and Todd Helton, hey, former Vol, right? Peyton Manning took a job from him.
Yes,
to get the Hall of Fame. I'm not one of these guys that, you got to play for the same team your whole career. I'm not, it's a nice little thing, but the fact that two guys went into the Hall of Fame that both did that in baseball, that's every now and then, like the Jeters of the world, that's kind of cool. So, but anyway, nonetheless, you're anywhere for more than 5 years, it's a big deal. And when you're there for 20, it's a gigantic deal nowadays.
Well, and by the way, Stockstill played for Bobby Bowden from 77 to 81. So Florida State fans are familiar with him. Florida State, by the way, that they got their first 5-star quarterback signee since Jameis Winston and Luke Kromenhoek. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. But on 3 redid their rankings, and he got a 5-star. And let me say, coming up now, look, it won't be as and this we talk about this for an hour, but I know we're so short on time. National Signing Day Part 2 is next Wednesday. Today is the 1st of February, which is amazing. But we will have a few leftovers. Most of the big dogs, Seth, as you know, have basically already signed and made their decisions. There will be a few left over, but unfortunately, that first Wednesday in February is not like it used to be, is it?
No, I remember we used to just shut everything down, and it was the Wednesday before the Super Bowl, so it was a nice break in which you could bring on every major recruiter. But now, I hate to be that guy. Oh, they ruined it. I like special one singular events, and the fact that it's been spread out like this, it's lost its uniqueness. It still exists, and it's still, the lifeblood of what this thing is. But just that first Wednesday in February, it was just something special. And
well, there's too much on December now, Seth.
Yeah.
And they either need to move it all back to the first Wednesday in February, or if you're going to have an early signing period, have it in August, where it really would be an early signing period before these guys have their senior years, so they could get that out of the way.
He is Brent Beaird. I am Seth Harp. Yes, it is a reset here with PodUp and Matthews in the morning, this first day of February 2024. Quick reminder, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, brought to you in part by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. I know it's been a month now. I love my car that I got. Campus USA's rate was a full percentage point lower than anyone else when I went to buy my car. Brett, I'm not going to tell you what it is. You should see it. I'm feeling a little in my mid-40s now, Brent. I'm feeling a little Sprite. I got an extra pop in my step thanks to Campus USA. So how about that? So good stuff. Before we wrap up here again, I can't thank Brent enough. Big news. We started the show with it. Todd Golden gets his signature win as Gator men's basketball coach. This team now is, if the season ended today, would be in the NCAA tournament. Expectations have changed. Now with where this team is, if they stay healthy, they should make the NCAA tournament. 15-6 overall, 5-3 in the conference. Even if they go 500 in their next 10 SEC games, they'll finish the year at 20-11 and 10-8 in the conference. Is that enough to get them in? We'll see. But that's if they just go 500 down the stretch. If they finish above 500, they go 6-4. That gets them to 11-7 and 21-10. I don't see how they don't make it. They're not in top 5 seed range, but this Florida Gator basketball team, Todd Golden, has now built them into an NCAA tournament team. So all the criticism that has been levied, albeit fair at times, now you got to tip your hat when something is done, and to go on the road and beat a top 10 team, like Florida did last night. How do you do it? You do it rebounding, free throws, and daggers. Florida from the free throw line, 82%. Kentucky just 65%. Florida shot more free throws than Kentucky. How about that? They out-rebounded the Wildcats. Wildcats are bigger in the paint. Florida out-rebounded them. And, of course, Walter Clayton Jr., the big story, 7 daggers from three-point land. Brett, that's why the Florida Gators, have their signature win. Tip of the hat to Todd Golden.
Absolutely. And they've got some big games coming up, and that's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. But they're setting themselves up for a nice run here too. But listen, it's going to be a very fascinating SEC season. You mentioned South Carolina a few minutes ago. South Carolina having beaten some of the better teams in the league as of late. So what we've got a year this year, Seth, almost anything can happen in this conference.
The SEC conference is a good basketball conference. And they, both Kentucky, the job that Alabama's in first place. The Auburn, they got 3 or 4 teams that can make it to the Sweet 16. So Gillespie, they've really turned this conference around from where it was a decade ago. Brent, as always, man, it's a pleasure to have you on and you being my cohort in crime over these 60 minutes. Can't thank you enough. Look forward to doing it again soon.
Me too, brother. Thanks for helping us out as always, and we'll look forward to next time. Take care.
There we go. Need to thank, of course, Brent Beaird, Zach Rothrock producing, Freddie Weeby, Shane Matthews, JC and Freddie will be back tomorrow. For Brent Beaird, I am Seth Harp. This has been PodUp with Matthews in the Morning.